All right, guys, welcome back to your Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick are going to be looking at a top 25 ranked matchup between SEC foes. Texas A&M hosting Missouri. Aggies 2-point favorites. 48.5 is the total. 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Early kick from College Station on ABC. Looking at the offense for Missouri, this is an offense that has been pretty good. Brady Cook has been pretty stellar this season. 236 yards passing, has 4 rushing touchdowns on top of 4 passing, has 1 interception. Passing attack's been, holding a little bit back, it seems like. He's only got, he doesn't have a single game of over 270 yards. Obviously, Luther Burden early on in the season was battling a bit of an illness, I think it was, so it took him a second to get up to speed. Last 2 games, though, he's come full circle. 12 receptions combined, almost 200 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns. So Burden's coming alive at the correct moment, Nick, as they enter conference play. Theo Weiss Jr. was phenomenal in his absence. He's got a team high 287 yards on 26 grabs. And then Mookie Cooper, Marquise Johnson both have over 100 yards receiving. So this is a team that has plenty of options, including Burden, who is considered to probably be the nation's best receiver. The pass game, though, Nick, has been holding a lot back. And I think this team, they're playing pretty good on offense. They're not stagnant at all. They're good on third down. They're showcasing balance. Beating Vanderbilt by 3, terrible look. Winning by 6 against Boston College in a game that they potentially could have lost if it wasn't for one more defensive stop or one more, offensive first down. It's not a great look. This team is a lot better. These final results are showcasing, and I think a week off is going to give them a chance to recuperate and then get back on track, Nick, because they should be putting up a lot better results.
This team should be putting up a lot better results. This is a team that, was a top 10 team entering the season, still a top 15 team. A team that is supposed to be one of the best teams in the SEC, and they've looked a little lackadaisical and not themselves so far. They're currently ranked number 9 in the nation, and they are a top 10 team, but they haven't really played like one. Close OT win over Vanderbilt, a close win over BC. Before that, they blew out Buffalo and Murray State, token opposition in those 2 games. Cook has been very accurate, right? 68% comp rate's really solid, but below 1,000 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. Haven't seen a whole lot enough out of him, in my opinion. You want to see them throw a ball a little bit more. They're not attempting as much passing as you would hope. 265 yards per game through the air is not exactly how high you would hope, considering the weapons they have. Now, Theo Weiss has stepped up big. He's been really solid, but again, he hasn't gotten the end zone yet. That's been a thing with Theo Weiss. He doesn't have a whole lot of touchdowns in his Missouri career. Not really been a big red zone threat. Those 4 passing touchdowns from Cook have all gone to Luther Burden, who has 257 yards receiving and 13.5 yards per grab. It's been Burden and Cook linking up in the red zone. That's been the bulk of that's been all their passing touchdowns right there. Obviously, when you're a team, you can kind of try to cover that, try to prevent Burden in the red zone, because you know where they're going to go. Marquise Johnson, Joshua Manning, Mookie Cooper all have a few grabs here and there, but you want to see a little bit more out of Cooper and Johnson potentially. I need to see more out of Brady Cook. I've not been entirely pleased with this passing attack so far. Want to see what they do here. They're playing a step up in competition against A&M. They struggled against 2 weaker opponents the past 2 weeks. This is a tough matchup in a tough road environment.
And he hasn't been very efficient with his legs the last couple of games either. That's something I think they're certainly going to allude to keep him ahead of the sticks. And again, the offense, they're still putting up numbers. They haven't been completely stagnant, but they're not as explosive as we probably imagined they should be. So I think just some early season jitters, I guess is the best way to put it. Looking at this run game, they've been just as good as we imagined. Nate Noel, Marcus Carroll, the 2 Sunbelt transfers at running back. We're a big fan of both of these guys. Noel's really taken the reins of this backfield, 441 and 2 scores. A pair of touchdowns for Carroll as well, on top of 164 rushing. So this is a team that's running the ball very well. 826 total yards, over 5 yards per carry, 206 per contest. This is a team that has balance, Nick, and that doesn't even include what Cook can do in terms of production. I think they'll get back on track here in all regards, but they're playing a very stiff Texas A&M run defense, and if they struggle to run the ball, then it might be an issue because, again, the passing attack hasn't been as explosive, even though the potential is there.
They have been successful running the ball, which has certainly been solid for this offense. 206 yards per game on the ground is a really solid average. Nate Noel has plugged into this offense and been phenomenal. 441, 6.4, and 2 scores. Marcus Carroll, 164, 4.7, and 2 scores. Brady Cook, the 97 rushing yards, and 4 scores, while Luther Burden has a rushing touchdown as well. But you make a great point there, right? If A&M can stuff the run and prevent and really, make Missouri struggle on the ground, get them in tough positions early on, this could be a tough day for Missouri if they force them to pass, something that they've not been comfortable doing so far this season. Missouri has to set the tempo early on the ground. First down runs have to be 5-6 yards. Get ahead of the sticks. Do not fall behind the chains, because if they do, they can find themselves in big trouble, as we've seen Brady Cook might get a little uncomfortable and make a mistake or 2.
Yeah, I mean, right now they're 14th in the SEC in terms of 30-plus yard completions, only 4 of those. So I think they're going to eventually find their stride. So far, it's been less than stellar. The offensive line for Missouri, it's been a great unit. Marcus Bryant arriving from SMU at left tackle. Caden Green, he was going to be the left tackle. They ended up kicking him to guard, though, with the arrival of Bryant. I think that was the correct move. Certainly wondered in the offseason if that's what they would end up doing, and they have. Connor Tolson, an elite center. He's having a great year. Cameron Johnson, struggling a little bit in pass protection, but he's a great run blocker for them at right guard. Armad Mabo at right tackle, also having a phenomenal season. This is a very good, underrated offensive line, Nick, and I certainly want to show them flex some muscle against a very good Aggies front on Saturday.
This is an offensive line that has to be strong. They've been strong so far this season. This is a big physical unit. We said that Missouri was strong in the trenches, something that they had to be in the SEC. And I've been very impressed with this offensive line so far. They've created really good running rooms, provided some nice protection. They're going to have to find a way to make sure that Cook is able to stay in the pocket when he wants to and give him the ability to run out of the pocket when he wants to use his legs for domination on the ground. I like this offensive line. Tough matchup against the A&M defensive line. That's a very strong unit. It always has been. But I do like the advantage here potentially for this offensive line for Missouri.
Now we look at the Texas A&M offense. I just read off a number of 30-plus yard pass plays, and the Aggies are actually dead last in the conference in that number with only 3 of them. Marcel Reed's taken over this quarterback position as Connor Wigman's just been unable to stay healthy, and it's not like he had the greatest game against the Irish in the opener anyways. He gives him a bit of a different dimension because this is a dual-threat player. He still is just a redshirt freshman, though. Doesn't have a game of over 200 passing just yet, but he has exactly 2 touchdowns with no picks over the last 3 games. Coming against Florida, Bowling Green, and then the Hogs. Only a 55% completion rating. He has an arm. He's accurate. He can be explosive as well. Gives them an added dimension with his legs as a runner. He had 80-plus rushing in 2 games prior to Arkansas, where he was held in check. Only 13 on 10 attempts. Had a touchdown, though. This is a guy, again, that's a dual threat, Nick. You're going to be playing up against the defense that's going to look to contain him. The explosion in the passing, it's just because he's a young player. Doesn't really fully understand defenses at this moment in time. And it seems like they're wasted opportunities because I thought this was a very talented receiving core for A&M coming into the year. And it seems like they've just lost a lot of shine and respect because they're not producing. Guys like Cyrus Allen, Noah Thomas, Jedi Walker, I think Jabari Barber, Moose Muhammad, these guys have all produced in the past, and there's just not many numbers here to speak of. Do you think that this passing attack can get back on track here, even though they've struggled against the likes of Arkansas and Bowling Green?
Been disappointing so far in this passing attack that Marcel Reed has taken over. He is your number 1 guy here, and I think he's a really solid dual threat quarterback. We saw that on the ground with him so far this season, but I don't know if he's going to be the truth going forward as a passing quarterback. 230 yards, rushing 5.5, and 2 scores, which is a really solid number. When you look at the passing, 54% comp rate is extremely concerning, 585 and 6 touchdowns. No picks, which is really solid. But I look at Moose Muhammad, right? Only 4 receptions for below 50 yards and a touchdown. He needs to get more involved. Trey Watson, Jedi Walker, both have single-digit receptions. They need to get involved more. Noah Thomas has 16 receptions for 187, and Cyrus Allen has 11 receptions for 203 and a touchdown. These guys got to get involved more. This A&M passing attack has to find a way to be more efficient. They've been not great at all through the air. 162 yards per game through the air, 1.6 touchdowns per game is not a good enough number in the SEC. And when you're playing against a Mizzou team here that can really score a lot of points if they're firing on all cylinders, A&M could find themselves outpaced early on.
Now you look at the Aggies rushing attack. It's been very good this year, 231 a game. 300-plus against the Gators a couple weeks back. Had 146 against the Irish, only 134 against Arkansas. I mean, these are good numbers for if you had a complimentary passing attack against these defenses, but they don't right now. And if Marcel Reed's not clicking in the run game, what do they truly have is a big question mark. I think Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels, this is a phenomenal 1-2 punch. Moss, 471 and 3 touchdowns. He's been phenomenal. And, of course, Reed and the aforementioned Daniels have 200-plus rushing. So they have plenty of options here, to get stuff done. Terry Bussey as well. He's a freshman, versatile player that has a touchdown rushing. And he's an explosive playmaker whenever they get him on the field. Offensive line for them is pretty stout. Finally playing up to the standard that we expected. Under Jimbo Fisher, they just never seem to progress at the level they're capable of. I mean, they have big bodies, Nick. Everyone's like 6'5", 330. And this is a massive O-line. Trey Zahn at left tackle, having a great year. Chase Masantis continues to grow at left guard. At center, Kolonu Fai having an all-right season. At right guard, Amari Reed Adams, Amarj, that is, sorry. And then Cam Dewberry, whoever plays at that position, has done a good job, even though it's been Reed Adams for a majority of the season. Then at right tackle, Demetrius Crownover, Good offensive line here, Nick. Again, the size is outrageous and outstanding. They're progressing at a pretty solid rate, but it just doesn't seem like they have the complementary passing attack to help them out. But I expect clean pockets for Marcel Reed, opportunities to run the ball. This is a good offensive line.
I like this offensive line a lot. It's a very physical, strong unit. Again, another team that we felt was going to be really good in the trenches, and they've been solid on the ground so far. 231 yards per game rushing, which has been really solid. 5.5 yards per carry is really good. Le'Veon Moss has looked the part so far. 471 yards rushing, 6.2 yards per carry, and 3 scores. Reed, I mentioned his stats already. Amari Daniels has 2 rushing touchdowns and over 200 yards rush as well. So been very effective on the ground. This is going to be a battle. It seems like it's going to be a battle on paper of 2 teams that can run the ball very effectively. Which team will have the better day through the air will probably be the team that wins this game. Very interesting matchup, though, when you look at that. Can these two defenses, that is, disrupt the run and force these teams to pass the ball? I want to see how that kind of shakes out on Saturday.
Now you look at the Missouri defense. You talk about that matchup they're going to have in the trenches, and they just faced one against Boston College. They passed with flying colors, where they only allowed 49 rushing yards to one of the better rushing attacks in their respective conference. A very good offensive line of experience, very good versatile running backs, a quarterback who's highly explosive. They've already faced this test, Nick, and again, they were phenomenal, held them to less than 2 yards per carry. I think the Aggies will certainly have a little bit more success than that, but this doesn't seem like it's going to be a challenge that phases them. Johnny Walker having the year I expected. Christian Williams in the hole has been a great run defender. Needs to do better as a tackler. Chris McClellan having a good year. Zion Young as well. This is a D-line we wondered who would step up, who would be the playmakers outside of Walker, and so far this starting front four has delivered. Maybe no elite standout talent so far, maybe no crushing production, even though they're all kind of chipping in a little bit, and I think that's going to be the recipe to success for Missouri. What are your thoughts on them facing this rushing attack compared to the one they saw in the Eagles a couple weeks ago that does need to be respected because they're very good in their respective craft?
They certainly need to respect what happened in that game against Boston College. It's a very strong rushing attack that has a really nice way to hit you with a dual-threat quarterback in Thomas Castellanos. So they've seen this. They've had some practice film. They've been able to work on this and understand what they did against a rushing quarterback that was similar to what they're going to see on Saturday. Because when you think about it, A&M, Marcel Reed, they're going to run the ball. I think they have some solid pieces here. Chris McClellan has been really solid. 17 total tackles, 14 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, 2 pass breakups. Zion Young, 13 total tackles, tackle for loss, and a pass breakup. Johnny Walker, he's been solid, but still waiting for him to break out. 9 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, a sack. Starling Webb and Christian Williams have 5 and 4 tackles respectively. They're both solid rotational pieces. I do like the depth here. I think Walker's in line for a big game here. I like to see what he can do. This rushing defense has to be really dominant. They have to be really solid. They got to hold this A&M offense in check, similar to what they did to BC.
Now you look at the middle of this defense. I'm very confident in what these linebackers can accomplish. Tristan Newsome, Chuck Hicks, injuries forced them to get on the field end of last year, and they played pretty well. They're playing pretty good up until this point. And then Corey Flagg, of course, the transfer from Miami, he's been terrific as well. I certainly want to look for him to get more snaps. He's, the second leading tackler for them right now, has 3 TFL, which, leads the way, or second most, that is. But, this is a linebacker group that I'm very confident in a matchup like this, Nick. Pretty underrated front seven that Missouri's bringing to the table. Again, maybe no elite standout talent, no all-conference performers maybe. But overall, this is a very good part of this football team that's playing very good so far.
I like this core here. I think these 3 players, with Flagg being a bit of a backup, but having 20 tackles and 3 tackles for loss plus a sack has been really solid. Chuck Hicks, 15 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss and a sack. Impressive. And Newsome, 14 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss, a pass breakup. Hicks has a pass breakup as well. These are 3 really solid pieces, 3 good leaders here. They got to be strong against the run as well. They got to be good over the middle of the field. I like this unit here, though. I think this is a solid linebacking core.
Now you look at the Missouri secondary. They had a wide open touchdown they allowed to Boston College late in that game that allowed them to make it a 6-point contest. They ended up allowing 250 and 3 scores in that one. So they did their job against the run, but shockingly were getting carved up against the pass. Missouri early on had a long passing touchdown. Still held them to under 200 yards with that one going to extras. So pretty impressive performance there. The corners aren't really playing up to par, I would say, currently. Toriano Pride, a Clemson transfer, and then Drayden Norwood. These guys are, the potential is really good for them. They're capable of playing a lot better football. I think Norwood, he was my pick to be, breakout player on this defense for the Tigers. Neither of them have been stout tacklers. The run defense has been a little bit shaky. The good news is, though, the safeties have been great. The veterans on this football team, Dalen Carnell, guys like Joseph Charleston have played here for a couple of years now, have really been great tone setters. And then Marvin Burks has been a pleasant surprise. He's been an elite tackler on the other hand. He's been phenomenal against the run. So I think this is certainly encouraging for them because they do run that 4-2-5. This is a defense that has a lot of experience, a lot of talent in this back end. This will be an opportunity for them to prove it against a team that, again, is struggling to, find deep plays. Travis Johnson, another veteran who's back there. What do you think of the secondary, Nick, so far? A group that I think as the season goes on will be great, especially if guys like Burks can continue their great play as he is the leading tackler right now.
Burks have been phenomenal as leading tackler, 24 total tackles, a pick and a pass breakup, really solid. Dylan Carnell has been solid, 12 total tackles, a pass breakup, three pass breakups, that is, and a tackle for loss. Joseph Charleston, 10 total tackles and a pass breakup. Drayden Norwood, 6 total tackles and an interception for him, while Toriano Pride hasn't been phenomenal yet from Clemson, but he does have a pick that he returned for a touchdown, a pick 6, and 2 total tackles. Want to see more out of Pride. He needs to kind of step up and have a big game for me at left cornerback. Hasn't really played up to expectations. This is a good unit. I don't think they're going to be super tested here, but I think they're going to have a strong day. If they can be strong, prevent A&M from really getting any sort of deep passes down the middle or anything on the exterior as well on the boundaries, I think they'll be in line for a solid day. I do like what this defense has. I think this is not a bad secondary unit at all.
Now looking at the Texas A&M defense, you start with a D-line that I thought was going to be a phenomenal unit this year. I would consider them pretty elite. They're deep here. Nick Scorchin, one of the top edge rushers in the country. Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart. Albert Regas has a lot of size. Cassius Howell was another highly profiled transfer from Bowling Green who can rush the passer. They also have a former 5-star in DJ Hicks. I mean, they're incredibly deep here, Nick. This is a D-line that has so far played a very good, season through the first month. Against Notre Dame, they allowed some big runs, so they ended up almost giving up 200 rushing in that contest. Since then, though, it's been flat-out dominance. They've not allowed much. This is a pass rush that has 8 sacks. Not the highest of numbers, of course, but they've been getting better week to week over the past few, and they're certainly capable of just holding you in check at the line of scrimmage, and they provide a lot of negative plays. They had 10 of them against Arkansas in a close, low-scoring battle. This is going to be a great matchup here. We just praised the Missouri O-line. I think their potential is off the charts, but for them to make a statement here against this Aggie D-line, it's going to take a lot of effort.
It's certainly going to take a lot of effort to make a statement against a really good unit. Nick Scrouton has been really solid, 14 total tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 pass breakups. Shamar Stewart has 13 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. Shamar Turner has 12 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack. Cassius Howell has 12 total tackles with a sack. Albert Regis, 10 total tackles. So a lot of nice stats there. This has been a unit that's been able to get in the backfield, get some tackles for loss, some solid production there between Stewart, Turner, and Scrouton. I like what I've seen so far. They're facing up against a really strong offensive line. Going to be a key battle in the trenches. Going to have my eye on that all day during this game.
And now you look at the middle of their defensive group that's not been really performing probably like we figured. Teron York, a good player, but he's still a sophomore who, in the Notre Dame game, for example, made some mistakes. So this is a guy that's certainly a great leader for them, though. Scooby Williams is surprisingly playing better football than I imagined. This is not a guy that was very good at Florida. The rest of the linebacking group, they're trying to play catch up, I think, in terms of what York brings to the table, because it still is a young unit. Damian Sanford, a guy who's been getting on the field, has been kind of lackluster. He's one of the top leaders on the team in terms of missed tackles. So linebacking core so far has been pretty underwhelming, but a guy like York can completely flip this game on its head, Nick.
York could definitely do that. 27 total tackles, leading the team, 1 pass breakup, but has looked weak at times. Scooby Williams, 17 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, and a pass breakup. I need to see more of this. They've been inconsistent. I know York's a young player, and it's nice when he's leading his team, but he got exposed a few times against Notre Dame, made some mistakes in other games. Need to see him lock in because they're going to attack you over the middle of Missouri. They have opportunity to run really down your throat, and they also have opportunity to throw crossing routes across the middle and target some of those more shifty, speedy receivers. York's got to be very strong in this game.
Now you look at a Texas A&M secondary, 3 games of 250-plus passing allowed, certainly less than stellar. I know Florida was playing from behind. They made good plays in that game. They had 3 interceptions, for example. Bowling Green was able to keep that one close to their passing attack. And then Arkansas has had some big plays as well. This is a secondary that I think is very good from a talent standpoint. This is a Mike Elko scheme that most of these guys are pretty familiar with. Guys like Will Lee are transfers, though. Dees Ricks as well. Javon Thomas, those are the 3 corners have played a good bit. I think Lee's probably been the best, but neither of them have really been standouts. Bryce Anderson, a phenomenal player at safety. has the most missed tackles on the team, though. That's not great. Marcus Ratliff, he's a guy that kind of plays a versatile role for them. Biggest problem with this group in the secondary, Nick, is that missed tackles have been off the charts. I mean, they're missing them at a pretty high rate, especially in the back end. You're really seeing it across this unit. That's the biggest thing that's affecting Texas A&M. You're facing Luther Burden, incredibly explosive. You're facing running backs like Nate Noel. I mean, he is very shifty. Marcus Carroll on inside zone runs. He can make some guys miss. This is not ideal. You got to be able to tackle better, and if they don't, they're probably going to lose this game. That's the biggest flaw for this defense right now, and I'm definitely worried about how the DBs might play.
This is certainly a matchup you have to keep an eye on. I will say the secondary has 7 interceptions so far this season, so that's been a really impressive number. They have been able to force turnovers. Will Lee, 20 total tackles and interceptions, 6 pass breakups, been a really good coverage asset. Marcus Ratcliffe has 16 total tackles, 3 of those interceptions. Good numbers there. Dalton Brooks has 13 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, and a pass breakup. Des Ricks, Javon Thomas each have 9 total tackles, a pick each for them, and a pass breakup for Ricks, while Anderson has 8 total tackles and a pick 6. Plus a pass breakup. Got to be better tackling, though. He's got to wrap up and finish off those tackles. The secondary, I think, has been a really solid unit, even though they've given up some yardage at times. The tacklings have been a bit of a bad issue. They've been solid in coverage. They have gotten a few picks, but this is a total new ball game against Luther Bird and Theo Weiss. Going to be a tough matchup for these players in the secondary.
Going to the tail of the tape, the team comparisons. At quarterback and receiver, I'll give the edge to the Tigers. Running back, I'm going to call it even. I think both duos are really sound. Offensive line, I think that's pretty even as well. Even if I had to lean one way or the other, it'd probably be Missouri. Linebacker and DB also in favor of Missouri, while the D-line, I'm going to go ahead and give that one to the Aggies because I think that's one of the top 5 units in the country. How do you feel about these, Nick? SEC rosters are always hard to compare, but I think this is pretty clear-cut.
They're very hard to compare. The top of the SEC, basically every team is just about even, it feels like. I think Missouri has clear advantages this game. I think quarterback, wide receiver, and linebacker are very obvious advantages for Missouri. I think the secondary definitely leans that way as well. I'd be willing to give the offensive line to Missouri in this one as well, but you could certainly toss it over to Texas A&M. Running back, very balanced. I think Nate Noel has been really solid, but I think Le'Veon Moss has been better. This is a very interesting, balanced matchup between 2 teams in the SEC.
I got the final thoughts and the prediction. Keys to the game. For Missouri, you want to pressure Marcel Reed, but contain his legs at the same time. Run to the boundary. Force these A&M DBs to be better. We just harp on how bad they've been in tackling. Haven't been all that ideal in coverage either. For the Aggies, don't let them feed Burden. Obviously, that's going to be a big challenge to slow him down. The D-line needs to set the tone. I think Missouri here, this is a game I picked them to lose in the preseason, but seeing how they've played the last 2 games kind of changes my opinion because I think they're going to play a pretty mistake-free football game, quite frankly. I think Drinkwitz is going to have these guys dialed in after a bye week. A&M's a very tough opponent. Kyle Field, a tough place to play. Probably not going to be as rowdy at noon, Nick, as it would be at 7 o'clock at night. So I think they're going to win this game by 10. I think that the defense will certainly hold A&M in check on the offensive side of the ball while their unit gets back to their balance. It's going to be hard to run the ball, but I think they'll produce behind this great offensive line, and these receivers, they're going to cook.
I think this is certainly a matchup where you look at these 2 teams. I like Missouri in this one. I think Missouri's going to win this game. I think they're going to end up winning by more points than people expect. I know it's a tough environment to play down there, and that's certainly an impossible place. But the game being at noon certainly helps Missouri a little bit, kind of nullifies some of that intense atmosphere at Kyle Field. It's definitely a lot louder when it's a little more fired up later in the evening. I think A&M, if they let Burden have a good day, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. I think Burden will have a good day. I think Brady Cook will find a groove, hit Burden and Weiss, and really run up some nice numbers there. I like them to attack the secondary, attack some of the weak points, expose some of the missed tackles and some of the weak tackling from A&M, and get the job done and win this game by 10, 11 points. I like them to win this one. I think this Missouri team is, people are forgetting about them. They're on a bye. They played 2 close games, but they're still one of the best teams in the SEC on paper. They have a lot to play in front of them. They got to play a lot of tough opponents in the future. I think they're going to win this game and find themselves in a good spot right here. With Ole Miss losing, that also helps clear up some things for Missouri going forward in terms of potential playoff appearances in the future. So I do like what we can see here out of this Missouri team. I think this team is getting better. Over time, they will continue to get better. I like this matchup. I like Missouri to win this one.
As 2-point underdogs, we both have them winning by double figures. That's very bold, Nick. And obviously, Vegas, it's hard to go against them, but I certainly think that we're buying into a little bit too much of what we saw the last 2 weeks because they have been good on the offensive side of the ball. They've just been really hurting themselves, and it seems like they're not fully putting the cat out of the bag, it seems like. And again, I think this will be a mistake-free football game for Missouri. Bold acclamation to make in Kyle Field, but I'm going to go ahead and take the Tigers to get it done, as will Nick. That's going to be it for today's episode. As always, appreciate you joining me, Nick. A pretty underrated game on what's a pretty soft weekend, but one that could be very major.
I'm excited for this one. It's a big game in the SEC. I think this Missouri team is a lot better than people are giving them credit for right now. I know they've had some struggles early on this season. I like them to succeed here, have a really solid day in this game, get the job done, run away with a big win against the Aggies down there in Kyle Field.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.